Welcome back to the podcast. Today we're talking about how to get better at batting, 5 key areas to focus on. And I think I need help with this, James, because when I was, obviously I'm an amazing cricketer, absolutely amazing cricketer. When we were filming last week and I picked up the cricket bat for the first time in many, many years, I didn't even know if I was left or right-handed. So if you know if you're left or right-handed, that might be a great place to start, right?
I can't wait to get you on the bowling machine for the first time ever.
I don't know about that. Anyway, yeah. So, because, like I said, I used to, you know this obviously, but very, very briefly, used to play golf when I was young, and all my mates were right-handed. I just learnt right-handed because I didn't own my own clubs. So then, when I picked up the cricket bat the other day, I was like, am I left? Am I right? I don't know which way to go. So, yeah, it's all very confusing to me. But that's not what this podcast is about. We're focusing on 5 key areas. So could you introduce what are those 5 key areas we need to focus on?
Yeah, so this is a follow-on from the complete cricketer performance system that we introduced in the previous podcast, I think. So let's put it into concept and apply it to batting.
Context? Concept or context?
Context, yeah. Context is the right word. There we go. So let's put it into context in terms of batting. So again, I want to get across this idea of technique is the outcome, not the starting point. Right? That's a really important phrase to distinguish from, because everybody is so focused on technique, in batting technique. It is dissected to the nth degree on test match specials, because that's how you're going to get players out at the top level. People have their own ways of talking about things, saying what is good technique, what is bad technique. There's drills of how to improve your front foot play, your cover drive, your back foot play, watching the ball. There's all these different ideas of what technique is. But let's strip it right back and go, well, what influences technique? Why are we not addressing these aspects first? Because I believe they have a greater carryover and allows a better framework and platform for people to develop their technique from, particularly when it comes to batting, and we'll break them down step by step. So the 5-pillar system with technique based in the middle is health, movement, athleticism, mindset, and nutrition. Okay? So these are the 5 key areas that batsmen should be working on all the time to improve their game, because they impact technique. Let me use a couple of examples of how these pillars influence technique.
Yep. Let's
start with health. If you're overweight, unfit, can't breathe properly, and you have a high resting heart rate, you're at risk, particularly if you're an older cricketer, you're at more risk of a heart attack than you are to perform better. That's a true story, unfortunately, because there's been quite a few defib issues around the UK in the past few years of people having to be resuscitated on the side of the pitch. So it's something to think about. Without health, you have nothing. Therefore, if your health isn't in check, how is your technique going to be? How is your technique going to be impacted?
Yeah. You can do all the technique you want in the world, right? But if your health isn't there, then, as you say, you got nothing, right?
You got nothing. And you're going to be, unfortunately, that person who's being resuscitated on the side of the pitch. So and we don't want that. We do not want that at all. So we need to be healthy and round to go and be mindful of what we're doing with our bodies. Are they healthy or are they not? Now, there's multiple levels of health, and it all depends on where you sit in. As coaches and as trainers, we've got to look at the basics. So we look at what's your sleep patterns like? What is your body fat percentage? What is your breathing capacity? And what is your resting heart rate? They're good indicators to us. Now, in our medical framework, we're looking at blood work, right? We're getting a doctor's examination in to see what health is at the top level. So again, that's quite advanced, but there's multiple levels to health, and we can't do everything at once as coaches. So bear that in mind. Let's talk about movement. I see it so often now, I can't unsee it. Tight, restricted necks and shoulders impact your stance and your alignment to begin with. If you can't rotate your neck, it means your back shoulder comes out, which means you're more square on with the ball, which changes your bat face coming down automatically. It means you can't get your hands back to play the ball in alignment. Your bat path gets affected. Your bottom hand comes in because you panic and you play the ball out in front of you. That stems from your neck and shoulders.
Yeah.
I can't emphasize this enough. So you could be trying to improve your bat path all along, but if your neck can't turn around, your shoulder comes out, it physically stops your hands from going back. So you're always going to play inside out. That's in terms of movement.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of athleticism, strength and cardio, strength and power, right? If you're not powerful enough, if you're not generating power and using your body as one unit, well, you may be strong lower body, but if it dissipates at the core, it doesn't translate to your hand speed and the back coming through. And if you're not fit enough, it means you're making worse decisions as time goes on. And what happens when you break down, you default back to old habits.
Yeah.
It impacts your technique.
Your technique will go.
Therefore,
so if you can't recover between a 2 or a 3 or something, then yeah.
So you may have okay technique when you're fit and healthy, but when it starts to break down, it all goes wrong. That's why a lot of amateur players struggle to convert runs from 20s and 30s into 50s and into 100s, time and time again. Now, mindset, pillar number 4, right? If you're not fit enough, if you're not healthy enough, and you don't move efficiently, it means you're less efficient in your movement patterns, which means you fatigue quicker. Therefore, you make poorer decisions, which is your mindset. Like, what is your routines? What mindset systems do you have in place to remove the stress, the anxiety, the worry, the nerves with most of the kids we see with parents? Yeah. That's the best thing I'd probably advise parents right now is that focus less on technique. Teach your kids how to be less nervous when they go out to bat. Yeah,
because we've done some really good podcasts about mindset, haven't we? About having, as you say, having a good routine to follow before you even go on the field, so that you're doing the same thing every time. So it helps with those nerves before you go out to bat.
Exactly. And then when we go to the nutrition, which is the 5th pillar, right? This is like layering on top of all these other habits you have you've built up over time. Because again, I'll go back into this idea of most cricketers are dehydrated, chronically dehydrated. They don't think about hydration. In fact, let's take let's think about the average cricketer in club cricket, lower divisions. They've had a few beers the night before. Maybe had a coffee pre-game, maybe a bacon roll from Greg's, which is what tends to happen for most people. They go out and bat. No water, no consideration. They have a cup of squash halfway through, and they have a few more beers later that night, right? So that's a great fun way to do things, but if you're fueled and hydrated optimally, you make clearer decisions. So again, the ultimate thing is, like, most cricketers get frustrated not scoring runs. Most batters get frustrated not scoring runs. But there's multiple factors that impact it, which lead to technique. The more dehydrated you are, the less concentration and focus you have, the less likely you are to remember those cues on autopilot when you're batting, to make you get into good positions to hit the ball cleanly.
Do you remember the old, in terms of dehydration, stat from Precision Nutrition? Wasn't it like something ridiculous, like even like 1 or 2% dehydrated, then that immediately affects your performance and your potential injury risk? It's such a small percentage, wasn't it? I can't remember the exact stat, but it's somewhere around there.
And put it online later, but it was way bigger than we realised, and how much it impacts it. So again, like I said, it's technique is the outcome. It's not the starting point for us. Technique is fun. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I'm with you guys. I want to be hitting balls all day long. But it's the work around it and the habits you do around this that lead to this idea of consistency when you're batting, increased and improved performance, and ultimately scoring more runs. And these are 5 factors. Now, this is an overview of everything, right, essentially. But we break them down and we assess each of these individually to see where each cricketing athlete we work with is at. Because if they struggle with these things, I can almost guarantee it'll improve to their technique. Now, let's just go back to the movement things. I think that's the biggest thing people overlook. If we increase range of motion with their neck, if they can actually learn to rotate their neck properly. Now, restrictions in neck mobility rotation, assuming there's been no surgery and no chronic major injury, it's usually down to tight muscle, tight tissue, which is caused by just being stiff and old, which we need to fix, or a lack of stability when it comes down from here, and it makes up the work for the shoulders, which is causing havoc, right? So we address the mobility of the neck, we address the shoulder mobility and stability, and we address thoracic mobility, sometimes even the hips, right, going as far down as this. Guess what happens? This idea of relaxation comes in. So you automatically find yourself in better alignment positions, right? Less strain. Because if there's strain, the body doesn't want to do it. Like, again, like I'm still recovering from a bit of whiplash from me crashing hard on my snowboard. So it's hard for me to rotate at the moment. It's a forced movement at the moment because it's tight along here. Now, if I don't want to be forced, so if I'm not forced, I open up a little bit here. So this back shoulder comes out, which means I can't get my hands back up, right? So it's such a simple nuance that cricketers are going to start to realize that they all impact how you perform. Bat speed, power, strength, recovery, because it all impacts technique at the highest levels. So that's my kind of key elements to getting to when we're working with cricketers to improve their batting, is that I want to look at the 5 pillars first to see where they're sitting in these elements first, whilst we're addressing technique. And can we make a bigger difference and a faster difference by working on these things at the same time simultaneously as your technique?
Yep, cool. So just to sign off, what are the 5 key areas we need to look at?
So our complete performance system for batting is very much we look at health, we look at your movement, we look at your athleticism, we look at your mindset, and we look at your nutrition. They all impact technique. Doesn't say we don't work with technique, we do, but we're addressing these 5 pillars around the technique aspect when they're working with us. So a great example is a new athlete comes to us, we assess these things, we then work in person with them with their cricket. We then start making those changes while the rest of the week they're working on these other things we've set them homework to try and do. And they come back the following week and we start building more and more and more. So it's layering good habits as a foundation to improve technique.
Fantastic. There we go. That is it for today. Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you would like our free training plan, then go to cricketmanners.com/train. And remember, our goal is to make you a better cricketer.